I'm here today with Duane Purdue from Placer County Sheriff's Search and Rescue. He was a team leader at a time when I was a team leader, and we met several years ago.
Yes.
And I understand that was the motorcycle team that you were leading while I was leading communications. But in light of the trail, you performed tasks out there that helped both the runners and those on horseback. What was the motorcycle team doing out there?
Well, John, it started back in about 1978, 79, when one of the sheriff's deputies asked me to take a ride with him. And he took me out to a place called the Green Gate. Everybody who's run Western states is familiar with the Green Gate. And we walked back in on the trail, and he asked me if my guys could ride this. And I looked at it and said, well, I got a pretty good bunch of guys. Yeah, they can. It's not going to be easy, but yeah, we can. And then he explained that the runners would be coming through here and on the way to Auburn. And I thought to myself, from here to Auburn, that's a long way to go. He kind of grinned and he said, that's not even part of it. They started in the Squaw Valley. I was just in awe of what he was telling me that these runners were going to do. But he explained that he needed help sweeping the trail, making sure that they were okay and getting them evacuated or any needs that they might have. And that it would go on from the afternoon of one day through the night into the morning of the next day. And he was right. It did. We started working the trail, and we patrolled it as the runners came through.
Did you sweep it before the runners ran? Were there
we did, and
obstacles
make
you
sure
looked
that the trail was clear and that obstacles and things were out of the way. We did, and we got used to the trail because we were going to be riding it at night. And it's a whole different world at night than it is in the daytime.
I bet there is.
Yes.
You understand the horses are out there at night too. That's amazing.
That surprises me, but there's good riders on the backs of those horses.
How many motorcycle riders did you have?
I usually had 7 or 8 with me. Most of the guys on the team, search and rescue team, would all volunteer. They didn't hesitate. They said, yeah, we'll go, and they did. So it was taxing, but it was worth it. Yes.
Do you recall how many years you might have participated?
Well, from about 79, I myself about 15, 18 years, I think. Yeah, long time.
Do you see a difference between the horseback competition and the runners? Is that any difference for you?
We didn't do the horses because the motorcycles against a fatigued horse was kind of a challenge. And so we bowed out with the Tevis ride, but we did sweep the trail for many miles on the western states.
How difficult was that trail for motorcycles?
Well, the trail that we swept varied from moderate to significant. We went from the Green Gate up to Highway 49. There were times when the course went from Auburn Lake Trails down a very steep grade to the bottom, and it followed a road traversing the river and then back up through what we call Ankle Alley, and that wasn't bad. But after that, they lengthened the course, and it went along the canyon side, and that got to be a test.
I've heard that it's 18 inches wide in some places.
Not much wider than that. I think the wide part could be 18. Yeah, it's not much wider than that. The runners had their share of difficulties in negotiating that. You got to realize that they've come 80 miles, and so their equilibrium is not what it was when they started. When on a narrow trail with a sheer drop-off going on the side, that can be a test. When you're doing it at night, it can double that test.
What about weather? Did you have bad weather that would hamper your activity?
Well, the run was in June. We didn't worry, obviously, about rain much. They did up top, up in the high country, and the snow and things they worried about. Not that it would snow, but there'd be snow on the ground. But down where we were at, we didn't have rain, but we sure had a lot of heat. And that was a challenge as well. The heat inside those canyons was phenomenal.
I recall you were involved in some rescues. The helicopter had to come in and do something once. What others happened?
We had to call for a helicopter when they couldn't get a four-wheel drive in, and they landed and brought a medic out with them. This was just after Auburn Lake Trails, and the medical team at ALT wasn't sure about this one runner. They did let him go, but I thought it would be wise to follow him for a while. And he got down in there, and he went down, and he wasn't going to get up. He wasn't going to get out. And those are the kinds of things that we worry about, is when somebody is in that state of distress. That's why we're there.
I remember someone told me about a helicopter rescue of a horse, taking a horse out of the canyon. Were you at all involved in that?
I don't think so. I heard about that. I think maybe that was a long line or something that they got a horse out with. We didn't participate in that. However, in search and rescue itself, we had incidences with horses, but not on the Tevis ride.
What do you think a highlight of all of that had been? What would you look back on and say, this was the highlight?
John, the highlight to me was the first year that I worked it. Not to say that the subsequent years didn't amaze me as much. They did. Every time I went out there, I looked at these people. They weren't just athletes. These people were heroes. I mean, they were phenomenal. Running 100 miles. They were phenomenal. Some of them would come through. By the time they got to us, the only thing driving them on was their mind, the focus and determination that they had. There were times when some of these runners didn't even know their own name, but they had the determination to keep on going. When you asked me what was a highlight, it was seeing the determination and drive that these men and women had was just unbelievable.
Now, were you coordinating activities with radio yourself on the motorcycles?
It was not at first. We had walkie-talkies at first back in the 70s when we went out there. Radio traffic wasn't, it was a difficulty to cover our area with radio traffic. But the communications team with Search and Rescue spent a lot of time working on that. One of the worst things that could happen would be that we would run into a runner that needed medical attention, or one of my riders that went over the side and need emergency attention, and we're stuck. We can't call anybody. The only thing you can do is to leave and go back, and then you leave that individual there by himself. And the communications team knew that. So they worked a long time to cover those areas that were blacked out. And they succeeded. They did a good job of it.
Can you think of anything that I haven't asked you about that you'd want to tell about this experience?
Well, no, you've done a good job, but it was, for anybody that hasn't seen it or looked into it, go on the internet and pull up the Western States 100. It used to be billed as the toughest endurance event in the world. It might still be, I don't know, but if it's not, it sure is close. It's a phenomenal event, and it was an honor to be a part of it, to do something, to offer something to that.
Well, thank you for sharing these ideas and thoughts.
You're very welcome.
Yeah.
Thank you.